House Bill 538, Land Use, Affordable Housing, Zoning Density, and Permitting Housing Expansion and Affordability Act of 2024. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 is technical and adds co-sponsors. Amendment number 2 removes a section of the bill dealing with adequate public facility ordinances. It also adds modular dwellings as a building type that can't be prohibited by a local legislative body. It reduces the required percentage of affordable dwelling units for required projects. It provides a qualified project exemption for certain areas that are zoned for single-family residential use near a rail station. It clarifies that increased density limits for one qualified project can't be combined with other increased density limits to stack. And it delays the effective date of the bill to January 1, 2025. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Amendments have been adopted. Question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Are there any additional amendments to the bill to its title? Gentleman from St. Mary's.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The floor leader, please rise.
Good morning.
Floor leader.
Good morning. Good morning. Y'all changed floor leaders up on me. So, good morning. I'm looking at this bill, and it looks like the purpose of this bill is to circumvent local authority, local zoning authority, to build mostly low-income houses in different areas. And I'm looking at page 4 of the bill. It talks about a legislative body may not permit the placement of a manufactured home that is zoned allows for single-family residency. That's a trailer. So I was wondering, where in District 19 are we building trailer parks?
I appreciate that question. We started hot this morning. So
I said good morning.
Let me back up a little bit. So the purpose of the bill is to provide more housing, which we desperately need in the state of Maryland. We're not talking about, as you described, mostly low-income housing. So I want to correct the record. The affordability percentages in the bill are, depending on which type of project you're talking about, either 15% affordable or 25% affordable. And I also just want to clarify for the body that when I say affordable, I mean affordable for someone making 60% of the area median income. So in Montgomery County, that means for a family of 4, you make about $80,000 a year. And in Baltimore City, for a family of 4, that means you make about $70,000 a year. So I personally wouldn't consider that low income, significantly more than we make for this job, at least.
Yeah, that's true.
So I want to clarify that, first of all. We're not talking about what you said, mostly low income housing. And we were trying to be sensitive to local zoning authority while we're also trying to tackle a huge social problem in the state, which is the lack of affordable housing. Now, to answer your question, it is true that the bill prohibits local governments from discriminating against manufactured homes and modular homes if they're affixed to a foundation. So no, I would not classify that as a trailer, which is usually something mobile that you drive around. And instead, what we're generally thinking of is these homes that are modular. They're built off-site more affordably, and they're brought to a plot and affixed to the foundation. That's what we're envisioning with the bill.
So I'm familiar with modular homes. They're normally built in a warehouse of some sort. They're normally built and constructed very well. They arrive in sections on a trailer. They're picked up with a crane, put on foundation. The legislation says manufactured, which is a trailer. So you want to talk about the difference between the two?
Yeah, absolutely. So we actually, one of the amendments, and you'll see in the reprint on the floor system, is that we specifically added modular. We kept in manufactured, but we consider modular within manufactured. So manufactured is a broad umbrella term for any type of housing that's not stick-built on site, and that includes modular homes. Now, the reality is, these days, with the type of housing that we're envisioning in single-family neighborhoods, we're not talking about what people would generally refer to as trailers. But that said, I will say that I don't necessarily think that we should be on the floor today providing essentially class discrimination against people who live in homes that we would consider low class. And that's not something that we want local jurisdictions to do either, because we need homes for everybody. Whether you make $30,000 a year or $60,000 a year or $300,000 a year, everybody needs shelter.
I agree that we don't want to get in a prolonged discussion, especially on second reader. But I do want to clarify that the legislation does say manufacturer, and it does say modular. So I would think a modular house is a modular house, and a manufactured house is defined as a trailer, and this legislation allows for trailers to be placed on foundations, which is the definition of a trailer park. But I want to move the conversation on a little bit more to ask you about the other parts of this bill. It says the shall have density limits that exceed by 30%. So our counties have density limits set in place for school allocations, but this legislation is superseding that and allowing for 30% more housing built in certain sections?
No. So as the bill came in originally, there was a reference to what some counties have, the adequate public facility ordinance, which prohibits housing when schools are at or above capacity. The committee struck that provision. So under the bill, local counties are still empowered to reject housing all they want if they don't think their infrastructure can handle it. But yes, if there is no adequate public facility ordinance in place, or a county chooses not to use it, not to use their veto power, because maybe their schools aren't overcrowded, maybe their businesses, for example, need more workers, maybe the last couple of decades they've had population loss, whatever reason they want more people, right? Then under the bill, for certain types of projects that we're prioritizing, the governor's prioritizing, you would get in multifamily zones up to a 30% density bonus.
Okay. In another portion of the bill, it talks about deed restriction on pricing for affordable units, for deed restriction, including 25% of units, a deed restriction for 40 years. Is that true?
Yeah, that is true. So that's the affordability mechanism in the bill that I talked about, how we're not talking about mostly low-income housing, but we're talking about depending on the type of project, it's 15% affordable or 25% affordable. And we want that to be at least a moderate term affordability. We don't want that to be affordable for 3 years and then it be ripped up and say, oh, well, now it's market rate housing.
So I'm confused about that because we often cite in this chamber redlining and past discrimination on people that purchase housing. If you're going to limit the deed to a certain price, aren't you just creating like a whole class of purchasers that are simply nothing more than renters if the price isn't allowed to escalate on the house?
No. So generally these buildings are going to be renters in a lot of cases. However, there's nothing to prohibit ownership. So these can be converted from rental units to ownership units, and that deed restriction would remain the same whether it's a rental or something that's owned by the tenant. They purchased it, for example.
But let me make sure I'm understanding this correctly. The person that owns the property would not receive any appreciation on that property because it's restricted by deed for 40 years?
No. We're not talking about rent stabilization where the price is locked in. We're saying that it has to remain affordable as inflation grows for a family making 60% of the AMI over time. Okay. So no.
Gotcha. Well, I appreciate you answering these questions. I know other members have other questions, but thank you and have a great day.
Yep.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the minority whip.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just for the good of the order, it appears this bill has been heavily amended. Our members have some questions. Would the floor leader be opposed to special ordering it to appropriate time tomorrow for the purpose of review and some amendments?
Floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We're not opposed to that special order till tomorrow.
Thank you.
Okay. Question